The word peace is being exchanged in high-level summits. You have negotiators revising frameworks, proposals. And yet, at the exact same moment, a massive wave of Russian missiles crashes into Ukraine's critical energy infrastructure. At the same time, gold prices globally surge vertically toward the $5,000 threshold. This convergence, where high-level diplomacy is immediately countered by coordinated kinetic, digital, and financial aggression, it marks the full transition into a new era, an era dominated entirely by the logic of power. This is neural pulse. Let's analyze. We have to start where this paradox is most pronounced, and that's in Ukraine. Diplomacy is being used less as a path to peace and, well, more as a coercive tool. We've been looking at the new details of this revised Trump-Vance peace framework. It's now outlined in roughly 20 points. And the structural flaws are not just evident, they feel strategic.
Absolutely. The most dangerous element for Ukraine is this imposition of a rigid force cap. The framework demands Ukraine reduce its active personnel to about 800,000.
And that number, 800,000, that represents a mandatory, a dangerous 20% reduction from their current mobilization, which is sitting near 1 million.
And here is the structural flaw, the one that almost ensures a Russian victory. There is no equivalent, verifiable limit placed on Russia's forces.
None.
Ukraine is defending a front line that stretches over 1,000 kilometers. So removing 200,000 troops, that isn't just an inconvenience. It intentionally creates strategic holes in their frontline density.
Yeah.
It makes that defense permeable.
Unsustainable.
It's peace by strategic attrition.
And if the force cap hobbles Ukraine's defense, the demilitarized zone proposal, that seems designed to collapse entirely. It reportedly demands the cession of roughly 2,500 square miles of unoccupied western Donetsk.
You're forcing Kyiv to surrender key fortified defense points, positions they have held at immense cost, without a fight.
And based on past actions, this isn't a buffer zone.
No. What we've learned from Russia's actions in Georgia in the 2014 Donbas conflict is that Moscow views any demilitarized zone not as a buffer for peace, but as a force reorganization zone. It becomes a free staging ground for future operations.
So if Russia is handed this territory today,
then defending everything east of the Dnipro River becomes militarily impossible tomorrow.
Okay, so in stark contrast to that, we have a clear counterbalance emerging from the Paris summit. The coalition of the willing, the UK, France, Germany, they've presented a counterproposal that explicitly respects Ukrainian territorial integrity.
And the critical difference in the European proposal is the detailed discussion about placing European tripwire peacekeeping forces after any ceasefire.
That's a subtle but profound signal. Walk us through that distinction. What's the difference between this tripwire concept and, say, a formal NATO Article 5 commitment?
Right. Article 5 is a collective defense treaty. An attack on one is an attack on all. It demands immediate intervention. A tripwire force is different. It's a physical, symbolic presence of European troops on Ukrainian soil after a ceasefire. The deterrence isn't their fighting strength.
It's their nationality.
Exactly. It's the certainty that if Russia violates the ceasefire and attacks that force, the aggressor has instantly killed troops from Paris, Berlin, and London. That guarantees massive, immediate military retaliation. It's an attempt to manufacture a security guarantee where the U.S. framework intentionally offered none.
And Russia's rejection was delivered not just rhetorically, but kinetically. The Russian Foreign Ministry called the peacekeeping idea an axis of war.
Their response was designed to signal a high price. They threatened to consider all foreign forces and facilities on Ukrainian soil as legitimate military targets. It's coercive diplomacy at its extreme, Moscow is saying. Accept our crippling terms or we escalate.
And that escalation was timed precisely to the Paris meeting. Raw data confirms massive missile and drone attacks across Ukraine's energy grid today. Kyiv, the Dnipropetrovsk region, catastrophic explosions. We're looking at over 1 million people potentially without heating and water right now.
In sub-zero freezing conditions. And the key realization here is that these kinetic strikes are not isolated acts. They're being synchronized with attacks in the digital and physical infrastructure domains to multiply the chaos.
A single, calculated composite attack.
Precisely.
Let's pivot to that. The composite attack that hit the West today. We have news of a global cyber incident, widespread disruption, financial and government networks in North America, Europe, Asia.
And the sophistication is remarkable. We're seeing malware with advanced self-replicating and stealth capabilities. It's not designed to just steal data. It's engineered to cause cascading system failures.
So it's targeting the infrastructure itself.
It's targeting the processing of critical information.
And the suspicion points directly at state-sponsored actors. GRU-associated groups like Sandworm may be leveraging capabilities from Iranian hacking groups as well.
So if the digital war targets information processing, the parallel physical front
Yeah.
targets the transport and redundancy of that information. That synchronization leads us directly to the Baltic Sea.
Confirmation today of the seizure of the Russian-flagged cargo ship, the Fitberg, by Finnish authorities. This ship is suspected of intentionally dragging its anchor over dozens of kilometers.
Not accidentally.
So typically to cut multiple subsea communications cables and pipelines, including key lines used by the telecom firm Elisa.
It's a textbook gray zone tactic. Intentional sabotage disguised convincingly as a maritime accident. You have to look closely at the details. The ship was carrying EU-sanctioned steel, sure, but the crew was multinational.
Russia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan.
That's the core mechanism of deniability. If you disperse blame across multiple actors, it becomes incredibly difficult for NATO or the EU to justify a robust response against a single state.
So you have a coordinated global cyber attack on financial processing, and at the same time, the physical elimination of communications redundancy in the Baltic.
The intent is maximum operational paralysis.
Yeah.
Eliminate the backup systems physically, then attack the core systems digitally. The lines that once separated military conflict and sabotage have just dissolved.
The imperative, then, is to treat all critical infrastructure, digital and physical, as if it's already a high-priority military target.
It has to be.
And the anxiety from all this, it's being explicitly quantified in the commodity markets, where gold is flashing a major alarm bell.
The consensus is firm and, frankly, deeply alarming. Major institutions, HSBC, UBS, JP Morgan, Bank of America, are all predicting gold will approach or hit $5,000 an ounce in 2026.
This isn't a forecast based on traditional inflation.
No, this is an extraordinary projection based on systemic risk. What's driving it is the record central bank buying spree. China, India, Turkey, Poland. They are buying gold at a pace exceeding 1,000 tons annually.
A volume we haven't seen since 1967.
That $5,000 price target isn't just a number. It is the numerical quantification of fundamental systemic fear. This gold buying is a preemptive defense mechanism against the risk of U.S. financial sanctions.
It's de-dollarization in real time.
It's the physical manifestation of accelerated de-dollarization driven by an aversion to the weaponization of the dollar system. Nations are exchanging dollar assets for something the U.S. Treasury cannot freeze.
And this is where the economic structure looks fundamentally broken. The traditional inverse correlation between high real interest rates and gold prices. It has completely collapsed.
Exactly. Normally, high real rates from the Fed, non-yielding assets like gold lose their appeal, the price falls. But despite high real rates right now, gold is climbing relentlessly.
Why?
Because investors are signaling that the preservation of principal, their capital, is now prioritized above receiving any kind of yield. It signals deep, persistent distrust in the long-term stability of sovereign credit.
And you see that same distrust in the strange, false calm of the stock market.
That divergence is a critical warning sign. Valuations have become untethered from economic reality. If you look at the data, you see a growing gap between the S&P 500's earnings yield and the long-term real TIPS yield.
Which, for the non-specialist, means
the TIPS yield is a guaranteed risk-free return. The S&P yield is the potential return. When the guaranteed safe return is high, but investors are still pouring money into the S&P, ignoring that safe yield, it means speculation is rampant.
And reinforcing that nervousness is the increased insider selling. Executives seem to be quietly seeking an exit.
It suggests the smartest money is already leaving the party. And this financial anxiety, this fear about the dollar's stability, it connects directly to the global resource war unfolding on the periphery.
Let's shift our focus to Venezuela post-Maduro, where the U.S. strategy is brutally transactional. We've seen explicit messaging sent to the new regime, led by Delcy Rodriguez.
The U.S. will permit her rule, but only if she grants U.S. companies complete access to the oil industry and, critically, cuts all ties with Russia, China, and Iran. It's a direct mandate.
And the U.S. Energy Secretary even stated publicly that the U.S. would need to indefinitely control Venezuela's oil sales and revenue.
That statement is resource-driven interventionism writ large. It validates the fears of the Global South. It directly fuels the very de-dollarization we were just discussing.
It's the perfect case study for Beijing and Moscow.
It's confirmation. If you don't play by U.S. rules, they will use financial power to try and take your assets. That confirmation is exactly why gold is approaching $5,000.
And compounding this is the specter of privatized conflict. More discussion about private military companies, like those associated with Eric Prince, potentially filling security roles.
And that's how conflict becomes monetized. And speaking of deniable escalation, let's move to the Indo-Pacific. China is accelerating its efforts to change the status quo around Taiwan.
The PLA exercise Joint Sword 2026. We saw Chinese forces breach Taiwan's 24-mile contiguous zone.
Which signals that the traditional median line, that historical buffer, is functionally obsolete. China is establishing a new normal. They are conducting complex military operations right up to Taiwan's doorstep, demonstrating they can enforce a complete physical blockade at will.
But most concerning is the tactical escalation at the Second Thomas Shoal in the South China Sea. The tactics have moved far beyond high-pressure water cannons.
Oh, it's alarming. They've transitioned to explicit, aggressive physical tactics. We're seeing documented use of knives and axes in boarding actions, actively trying to destroy Philippine Navy boats.
It's functionally piracy.
It is, but it's designed with precision to inflict damage and humiliate while stopping just below the technical threshold required to invoke mutual defense treaties. It's the ultimate operationalization of the gray zone, high violence without formal war.
So if we synthesize the events of January 8th, from the coercive diplomacy in Ukraine, the attacks in the Baltic, the financial panic, one core thesis emerges.
It's the unavoidable truth. The existing rules-based international order is now a relic. We have fully returned to a world where military, financial, and digital power converge to define zones of influence. Power is the only valid currency.
For you, the listener, here are the three core facts that define this moment. First, the pursuit of peace through flawed frameworks is not de-escalation. It is an intensification of military pressure.
Second, the digital and physical realms are a single interconnected battlefield for critical infrastructure. You cannot protect your supply chains without treating your undersea cables and your government networks as components of a single operational defense challenge.
And third, global financial systems are losing faith in the hegemony of the dollar at an accelerating rate. This distrust is immediately reflected in the surging price of gold toward $5,000.
So the key question you have to ask yourself is this. If the world's central banks are positioning for a future where their reserves are no longer safe, what risks is your own organization taking by clinging to assumptions rooted in the stability of yesterday?
Neural pulse. Clarity in a complex world. See you tomorrow.